post-pandemic, what we're seeing is just there's a need and a want for people to do what they love. And there's people out there that love working with their hands. There are people out there that love being outside. And so how do you cater to those folks to make sure they have the ability to do what they love? And I guess the sort of the stigma of not going to college is lessening. I have a couple of friends and their kids did not go to college. One guy wanted to be an auto mechanic. He loves tinkering and working, and that's cars are his passion. And I just think back to when we were in school. He may have been ostracized. He may have been shunned. He may have been, "What are you doing?" And that's changed right now, which I love.
There's a major crisis facing healthcare facilities management. We have aging employees, aging buildings, and aging infrastructure. We've created the Healthcare Facilities Network, a content network designed specifically to help solve for these three pressing issues in healthcare facilities management. We bring on thought leaders and experts from across healthcare facilities management, all the way from the C-suite to the technician level, because at the end of the day, we're all invested in solving the aging issue. Thanks for tuning in. Look at our videos. You will find that as a theme across our content. This is the Healthcare Facilities Network. I'm your host, Peter Martin. Happy to be joined today by my two guests, Hamilton Espinosa, Patrick Murphy. Today, we're going to take a little bit different of a look at the employment market, the healthcare employment market. Ham and Patrick will introduce themselves, but we're going to look at it. We typically look at it from a facilities management perspective. Today, we're going to look at it from the consulting perspective, but both my two guests have deep experience in healthcare. They work in healthcare. They are healthcare. So it'll be a different look at one of the pillars we cover here on the Healthcare Facilities Network, the aging employee conundrum that is really affecting all hospitals. So before we delve into that, let's ask my guests to please introduce themselves. Hamilton, we will start with you.
Good morning. Yes, Hamilton Espinosa. I am the National Healthcare Core Market Leader for DPR Construction. I've been with DPR for 28 years. I am everything healthcare at the company. So any major pursuits, I do a lot of connecting of the dots, providing support and assisting in whatever way I can.
Thank you, Ham.
I could kind of just say ditto. Patrick Murphy, I'm the regional president here at CREF. We are a strategic end-to-end real estate and facilities advisor. I've been in healthcare probably more than half my life now, if you don't include the beginning, because I'm not including that first year. And I work out of Boston here with Peter. We do a lot of work nationally. We like to focus on hospital systems and regions that are really seeing some of the problems that Peter brings up in content on the healthcare facility just about every month. So happy to be here, Peter, and looking forward to a fun conversation with him.
I don't know if I'm going to get a word in edgewise, just really quickly, just to kind of lay the foundation. So Patrick and I work together. I'm working from home today, but we work together in the Boston office, and Patrick and I have worked together for 15, 16 years now, with a little bit of a break in the middle when I was doing the recruiting and the education. Ham and I go way back to 1985.
Way back, a long time ago.
So it's, you know me, Ham. I'm not a math guy. I wasn't a math guy in college. So 85, that's 15 and 26, like 41 years. Yeah. We met 41 years ago. Marquette University as freshmen. Ham, a guy from Lisle, Illinois. Me from Cranston, Rhode Island. Met on the 4th floor McCormick. So I really appreciate Ham joining us today. Ham, if you had said, like, maybe it'd take 1987, that, someday we're going to be on the internet on a YouTube channel, neither of which we would have known, and you're going to be talking to me and another engineer about healthcare facilities, I would say you're crazy.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm super happy they didn't have cell phones back then with video capabilities. So that's number one. And number two, I think we both looked a lot younger than we
Yeah.
are, as I see myself with all my gray in my beard.
Yeah, well, gray in hair. See,
At least you've got some
it's
hair
all
left,
over.
Pete.
That's true, Ham. That's true. So I do appreciate both Hamilton and Patrick joining me. And I want to start first, though, Ham, with your experience with DPR construction, and really you got in with DPR when you guys were just starting out. So just tremendous growth over 28 years. But talk to us a little bit about the market, the construction market today, what you're seeing in healthcare. And if you could start, I always just go back to COVID. I hate saying the word, but COVID seemed to be that sea shift in everything. So like what's the market like last 5-6 years? Where are we? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I sort of time everything pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, and it's crazy to think that we're now 6 years later from really the start of March of 2020, of when everything hit the fan back then. And so DPR founded in 1990. Like you said, Pete, I've seen a tremendous amount of changes in the company. But the one thing that I think we do really well is we operate in diverse core markets. And so we have an advanced technology group, and then the healthcare group. And what we're seeing right now is just a huge boom in the advanced technology market, right? Data centers are being built across the country, and money is no object. It's how fast can you go? How quickly can you get me up and running? Where can I get resources such as power and water to provide the cooling and power for my data centers? And that's a little bit counter-cyclical to where we are in the healthcare core market. The healthcare core market right now is, and I'll always say healthcare, the one constant is change, right? It's always sort of experiencing some change. There's always some revisions going on, and we're seeing some shifts from the One Big Beautiful Bill and what's happening with the Affordable Care Act. And I don't want to get political, so I won't. But what we're seeing is just a tremendous amount of uncertainty right now, and it's uncertainty due to a couple things, and one is just reimbursement rates. What's happening with reimbursement rates? The second thing that's affecting them is the rising cost of construction and labor, and where the rising cost is in the United States, right? Everyone's buying gas, everyone's buying eggs, and there's just a tremendous boom in cost of things. And so the healthcare systems are seeing that. And so when you've got construction costs rising and reimbursement rates lowering, it puts them in a difficult position. And then we're going to talk about labor, and I think the healthcare systems also have that same issue, right? What are they doing with nurses? What are they doing with clinicians? And so the thing that we're being asked by our clients is how can we do more with less, right? How can we be more efficient in what we're doing? And so there's a couple things that's going on right now. Pre-manufacturing, manufacturing of trying to build as much as we can off site so that we're just doing a kit of parts and installing them is helping with that. AI is going to also affect where we at, right? So what are we building, number one, and then how are we building it, number two, is I think we're going to have a watershed sort of moment here coming up with the market and what's going on. So it's two-sided response, Pete. It's like data centers, mission critical, advanced manufacturing is going crazy, and there's a little bit of uncertainty in the healthcare core market.
Patrick, you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Ham on that. And I think we kind of at CREF have a little different view because we're very hyper focused. It's kind of a niche thing for us. But I think you made a really good, you said something really interesting, Ham. You said, the pain or the question, the ask is, how do I do more with less? Right? I wish that was the question that we were asked, because that's the baseline that we at CREF like to start on. Because today, and I think this is where I'm going to wrap it into, the one consistency other than change is the lack of folks that are entering the hospitals to literally work in the hospitals. So by asking us as a group that comes in very early and leverages partners like you very early to start creating institutional knowledge to baseline them so they can ask the next question. So like you're gonna, RFPs, the way they were done pre-pandemic, were a lot more prescriptive, right? Because there were people there that actually knew what their priorities are. I think I've said in previous HfN chats that like most of the time I spend my efforts with clients trying to get to the root cause problems. And usually that lies with, we just don't have the people. So we've got to really dig down. We understand we want to do more with less, but we also need to make sure that we are driving the data. Specifically, you mentioned, the big, beautiful bill. We're actually working, Hamilton, with you on a big project in a pretty interesting community in Rhode Island that doesn't have a lot of free cash spend. And, we were able to leverage information because you guys are an information machine and we kind of have a good eye for this into helping get them funding. But, that took a lot of work. And if you're not able to help early to make sure that we're actually informing the decisions after we get that question, how do we do more with less? Like you're really in a challenging place. It's really slowing everything down. So I definitely think that, the focus from our end is to continue to try to support, supplement, or complement the staff, educate the staff on what they actually have, digitize their assets. I mean, you just talked about, the reimbursement rates. One thing that you can't get much help on, if you're not able to share on a quarterly basis your assets and how they're depreciating and the condition of them, that's now directly impacting your reimbursement rate. Like a lot of folks in a lot of hospitals that we work with are nonprofit, and they say, well, why would I care about all this depreciation and asset information? And it's like, well, you may not worry about the tax man, but you certainly need to make sure that you're watching that very, very sensitive point around reimbursement. So they just don't have the folks to do it. So we love to come in and create that foundation so we can actually answer that question, how to do more with less.
So what I like about your answers there, and it's very interesting, and it's why the field is never boring, is because all of these challenges, right? I mean, coming at you one after one after one, and everything you said, underlying it all is the problem that we have with aging employees and lack of employees. And Ham, you hit on data centers, which is interesting. No, it's not interesting to me. Actually, it makes sense. So from the many years of recruiting, obviously people will still call me and want, career advice, the stuff I love to do. And one of the calls that I'm getting increasingly is directors of FM being targeted by data centers because they don't have people either. And why this is really a huge threat, and I say threat because I'm taking it from the healthcare facility perspective, is they can pay more. Right. And they can pay a lot more. And so that's like another enemy at the gates who's coming for your employees.
And that's driving healthcare construction costs more, right? You would think that it might not, but electricians, for an example, can go and get $5 to $10 over scale on a data center job than they can on a healthcare job, right? The data center folks, they're printing money in the basement. I don't know, right? They can, for them, like I mentioned earlier, it's how fast can you go? How quickly can you get me up and running? And so they're willing to pay more to get that done. And so not only are they sucking up labor, but they're sucking up good labor. Folks that would typically be in a healthcare project are now going to data centers to get that done. And so that's driving up costs, but then leading to that shortage of qualified craft to work on healthcare jobs, right? So it's a double whammy against healthcare projects.
And I would even add to that we had a conversation, I don't know, this year with folks that have been in the healthcare facilities world for 30 years. And when I started in the early 2000s in healthcare, like it was just a different time in healthcare. Like there was reasons to come into healthcare. Maybe you weren't getting $5 over scale, but you may be getting a pension, and you were definitely getting free healthcare. But all of this economic pressure over the last 20 years has left the silver bullet. Like there's no silver bullet in the chamber now to attract folks, which is compounding the problem. And it's not, and Ham, you're talking about the actual trades, the project folks, right? Like we're going to find that folks that actually would usually be an electrical lead or an HVAC lead at a hospital, they're going to end up leaving. Yeah. To go work on projects, because it's, you've got the routine maintenance staff, but they're also skilled electricians, plumbers, carpenters. They're going to migrate even more. So it's a compounding issue for sure.
Yeah, that they're used to keeping buildings up and running. The one thing that I will say that healthcare has for it, right, is just the mission, right? Of yes. How do we heal the community, right? How are we making sure that we're serving an aging an aging population across the United States as well, right? I mentioned my age earlier. A lot of us are getting older, and we need, we're going to need more healthcare, right? And I think when you talk about the outlook, as the aging population goes, we're going to need more beds, especially in places where people are migrating to.
We talk about hiring a lot, and you hit on it, Ham, relative to the mission. Again, going back to recruiting, you can tell in talking to people when you're talking about an opportunity. So say I was recruiting for a director role, based on the questions that they would ask me upfront and early about the role, you can normally tell if they are potentially going to be a good fit. Because right. If they're all about money, if they're all about work-life balance, like if there are certain tells, right? The mission has to be more important because you're not going to get as much. You're just not. But you get the personal satisfaction out of it. And is mission important to you? And that's a very tangible difference in people who work in healthcare effectively. Ham, let's go to the construction market specifically. You talked about tradespeople. You talked about competition. Are you also having the struggles of recruiting younger folks in, recruiting experienced folks in? What is that market like for DPR construction?
Yeah, it's extremely competitive, number one. But I think there's been what I'm just going to call a generational shift, right? So Pete, you and I went to college together. Our generation, my dad, college was never an option for me. I had to go to college. My dad said, you are going to college, right? And I even think the generation after us sort of had that same mentality. Post-pandemic, what we're seeing is just there's a need and a want for people to do what they love. And there's people out there that love working with their hands. There are people out there that love being outside. And so how do you cater to those folks to make sure they have the ability to do what they love? And I guess the sort of the stigma of not going to college is lessening, right? I have a couple of friends and their kids did not go to college. One guy wanted to be an auto mechanic. He loves tinkering and working, and that's cars are his passion. And I just think back to when we were in school. He may have been ostracized. He may have been shunned. He may have been, what are you doing? And that's changed right now, which I love. The younger generation is gone back to, what makes me happy, and that's what I'm going to do. And so I think we need to embrace that, right? We need to make sure that we're not perpetuating that negative perception of not going to school. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're providing internships for high school students and have them ability to come in and look at all the different aspects of construction, right? You can be a pre-construction folk. You can be an operations person. You can be field person, right? There's all kinds of different things that you can do, and what's driving you, and then how do we make sure that we're giving you that something and that some place to help you with your passion.
How has that program been received at the high school level, and what locations are you doing that in?
So we're doing it across the country, and it's perceived very well. I do believe that and again, not to get political, but which I forget which Bush said it, but kinder, gentler world that we're in, and I think it's gone away from, as I mentioned earlier, that negative perception. And so it's received very well. We also have sort of this new hire. It's the DPR Builder Development Program, where we take all of our new college hires and we put them through a rotational program where they're spending one rotation in the field, one rotation in the field learning about what it takes to build a hospital or any construction project, one rotation with self-perform work, understanding the constructability aspect of it, and one rotation in the mechanical and electrical side, so that they're really getting this more well-rounded experience. And then from there, they can sort of decide, hey, this is where I want to take my career. And I think giving them that opportunity to look at multiple things is then they're looking at, well, geez, maybe I do want to be a superintendent someday. And then how do I become that superintendent? Maybe I do want to be a field engineer, and how do they get to that? And so providing that training and that knowledge and experience is huge for us. And we have a saying that who we build is as important to what we build. And you're really focusing on that, and you're really giving the opportunity for people to do what they're passionate about. Because you guys know, right? We've been working a long time, and if you're not happy, why are we doing it?
Yeah.
Right? Why are we here? We're spending a lot of time with our help, with our employee, actually our coworkers, and if you're not happy, get out.
Yeah.
But you really find your chi, right?
Yeah.
Find the thing that makes you happy. And I love that movie, City Slickers, right? When Jack Palance says one thing, right? What's the one thing? And it's different for all of us. So find the thing that drives you, find the thing that makes you happy, and go for it.
So, Ham, they might not have thought you were old the way you look, but going to City Slickers. Patrick, I know you love Generations, so I'm going to go to you next. But I just want to say one quick thing, Pat, about what Ham you just said. So, and I know I may be in the minority on this one. And Patrick, I don't even know if you and I agree on this, but when I was recruiting in the recruiting world, I'd work with hospitals, and they're looking for a director, and they would always say, no matter the size, could be a community-based hospital, could be critical access, could be academic medical centers. And I get it, an academic medical center. But they say the director needs a degree in college. That director could have 30 years of experience being a director, and they still wouldn't look at him. 30 years of hands-on experience. They could have gone, and I'm very it's the only soapbox I ever get on, and I always lost the argument. They could have gone through Naval Nuclear Propulsion School, worked on a submarine across the world for 20 years, but no, you don't have your degree. It used to drive me crazy. It shouldn't be black and white. There is some gray. And then you'd say to the hospital, why? And they would answer, because. There was never a good answer, and it's passed on. So anyways, I'm jumping off the soapbox. I can see it if you're a director in an academic medical center. Those are a little bit different. But to automatically say people with 30 years of experience doing it are not qualified because they don't have their degree is ridiculous.
Agree. And, it feels a little paradoxical, right? Because, you mentioned a few things, one thing that at least a trend or a narrative I'm hearing, right, is like, there are a lot of folks that want to be out and doing things with their hands and being in the field, right? And most of those folks end up in technical careers, right? And oftentimes they don't go through school to get there. And, with this push with artificial intelligence kind of giving folks a scare around administrative jobs and things that can be done digitally, it just feels a little bit paradoxical because, they're, even a lot of these organizations, they're getting leveraged with AI to find the right folks, and they're using a rubrics, and it's, like you just said, and, I'm jumping on your soapbox with you here, Pete, but, a lot of people don't get considered because of those types of things. Meanwhile, we're all seeing the trend that, we need folks in these, where I'm going to use the word hospitals, but it's probably across the board in commercial, but we need folks in the hospitals. We need people to be out there. And it was great to hear him, because you obviously, you guys go through and meet a lot of younger folks, much more than we do, because we're a lot smaller. But I love that idea of leveraging something that they care about, like being out in the field. We have a candidate we're talking to right now, and I'm trying to line them all up as field engineers today, regardless if they go into a facilities director role or a project management role, because at the end of the day, if they want to be outside or they want to be in the field and they want to work with their hands, it gives them a great opportunity to get in, especially these later generations, the younger millennials and the subsequent generations, there are half of them, if maybe more, I don't want to stereotype it, that do want access to be able to work with your hands. It's a human condition. And this ability for us to be able to say, look, a field engineer observes, gets on site, is able to collect data. We all need that data to get digitized. Like for us, we've been really trying to centralize our approach with our farm system, I'm going to call it that, around field engineering, because at the end of the day, it's a great term. For us real engineers, it's not really an engineer, but it's somebody that works technically and takes what's out in the field and makes it something you can do something with, right? I was a field engineer at Sturdy Hospital with my first job, and I spent a lot of time making sure the isolation pad was level, made sure that they installed the boilers and the chillers and things like that the right way. And I took that data and I loaded it into an Excel sheet. But we're missing that catalyst in the market right now. So just pulling all back together, Hamilton, like I love the idea of finding those folks, regardless of whether they're coming out of college, they're in college, or they went through a vocational approach and are technically leaning. I love the idea, at least for healthcare as an entry level, to give them that field engineering opportunity, because it can lead to either. You can go into projects, you can go into construction, you're in there, so you get that visceral feeling of patient safety and public health. And at the end of the day, a lot of us technical folks want to see something that we did well that day. I definitely think you have something there. So, and again, I think that it doesn't matter. That goes across all generations. There's folks out there that want to work with their hands. They can work in a really great industry that really needs them. You don't need to hamstring them. I didn't mean to play a word off of Hamilton there. Maybe it was Freudian, but you don't need to hamstring them into one specific thing. You can open them up and get them into a hospital. They're not actually having to make crazy decisions or get the pressure that you would as a facilities director getting phone calls in the middle of the night, but you're out there doing what you learned and you're in a hospital getting exposed to an environment. So like, I feel like that. And I actually looked at an article recently because I was like, boy, how's the job market looking for folks? And I specifically put in field engineers, and they're like, in industries like healthcare, it's an incredible need and there's an incredible demand. Like, regardless of where you think we are economically, there's an incredible drive for that. So if we're able to filter out those folks, I think that's part of the success story that we're going to have over the next 5 years in bridging this massive gap that we have.
It's another opportunity for another podcast, right? What are we doing with AI? And so you mentioned you mentioned data collection, right? And so if we sort of put this back on similar that our healthcare clients are dealing with, is an aging nursing population, not as many nurses going back into the field. What's AI doing with clinical diagnosis, and then who's plugging in that data, who's checking that data? So it's another podcast idea, but the data and what AI is doing from a healthcare construction standpoint is pretty cool. Okay, and so we're seeing robotics laying out floors, right? They're taking the plans and then they're going onto a floor and they're laying out the entire floor a lot quicker than what a human could do. We're seeing AI being with data, looking at safety and looking at, so it's a leading indicator, not a lagging indicator. So they're figuring out what's my likelihood of fall injuries or hand injuries, and then how do you prevent that, right? So that we're providing safer construction sites. And so that's how we're building it, and then what are we building, and is changing as well, right? So you're seeing AGVs, automated guided vehicles, that is replacing some of the human capital with deliveries. And so you've got additional elevators, you've got wider corridors, you've got a place where these vehicles need to go and sit and recharge. And so what are we building is also changing. I'll use another old reference, Pete, right? Big Brother is watching, and so where are we going with that is like I mentioned earlier, is huge right now. And I do think there's a lot of good that potentially come out of it from what I said, and just making that how do we do more with less easier, right? And so the speed of healthcare construction is increasing from a we said prefabrication a lot, right? It's now sort of this manufacturing piece, right? So where we're building wall segments or head walls, exterior wall panels, bathroom pods, corridor racks, off-site, and we're just installing them in that kit of parts inside of a building. So that's huge, and that's helping with that aging population for us as well.
Pete, before you jump, I got a kind of an interesting one, because I think it's timely. And before we wrap this piece up, this whole AI thing, where do we introduce it? I was watching a podcast recently, and I just love the way that the guy said it. He said, AI helps not end to end, but middle to middle, right? And that really resonated with me for a couple different reasons. One, it lit up light bulbs for me that the end-to-end component is still a human, it's still a human job, right? Like, and that means that, we just started talking about it, collecting the data is that beginning point, right? You can then use that data to help inform the middle to middle. And then at the end, which brings up another thing that we may have on the agenda, Pete, it might be another podcast, but transitioning to operations when a project that, Hamilton's going to build a Ferrari over there, right? And it's going to get delivered. But at the end of the day, that very complex asset now needs to get driven by whatever's living and existing and working in that hospital. So, it's kind of twofold. It's very conveniently good for craft, because we're very good at the bookends. But secondarily, it's really good for the youngsters that are coming in, because I think there's not as much fear of losing your job if your boots on the ground at that front end, collecting the data. And then you've really got to be and for those folks that may have a lot of skills, that end point, right? That's quality assurance. That's making sure that we tie it back to the human condition, because until AI actually fully does create patient care environments, we got to land that ship again. So for me, it feels like if you start to categorize things like that in your mind, you start to understand that there's a lot of value still out there for the entry level and for just really anybody, because it really is middle to middle, right? Even projects are middle to middle. I mean, I'll be honest, I did a lot of project management. If I was doing it with DPR, I'd be very involved in the beginning, and then I'd be very involved at the end, but I knew that the machine was running in the middle. So I don't know what that means, but it was just interesting.
It's the life cycle. It's the life cycle of a project, right? And what a wise person once said to me, that if a hospital is spending $1 in running their project, their organization, they're spending 6 cents on construction. The majority of their cost is FTEs and utilities, right? But if you look at our construction project, and even if you're building a big job, say that's 36 months, 3 years, how many years did they do a 10-year master plan, and then a year of programming and a year of design to get it to be construction? So there's a huge left of the line start, and then we're there, and then there's a huge right of the line from the finish, right? Of
Yeah.
running that Ferrari. So hospitals are 50 years, 60 years buildings. And so how do you run and maintain and operate that facility? And that goes to what you were talking about earlier, Peter, is where's my directors? Where's my electricians? Where's my clinicians? Where's my staff to just run that project for the next 50 years, and then run it efficiently, right? Run it as best as I can to serve the greater mission of providing a place to heal.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe to the network. And more importantly, share it with your colleagues in the healthcare industry. Together, we can solve the aging crisis that's impacting all of us.
The reason I'm home today is because my wife and I were flying out to Milwaukee. My son graduates from Marquette this weekend, so this is May 7th. So heading back out to school, which I'm very excited about. But the speaker is an AI guy, and so and my son, he's an old soul because he's one of those people who's resistant to AI. His career will be in probably public relations communication, so not on the mass side, kind of what I was, as far as communicating. And he sees AI as taking jobs away from those entry-level PR positions. So I'm very interested, and I told my son this. I'm like, and he's very passionate, and I'm like, listen to what he says. But I'm interested to see what the reception is. It's at Fiserv, so you're going to have 18,000 people there. It's a sellout, and I'm wondering how the students react to it. So that's number one. I'm interested to see how that is. And the second thing is, and this goes back to the program, your program, Ham, with the high school students. Lamar Davis, who is out in your old stomping grounds in Chicagoland. Lamar is the director of facilities at Shirley Ryan Ability Lab right in the city. And he was with Advocate for a long time. But I was talking to Lamar on one of the facility networks, and he made a great point. And he said, Pete, kids don't grow up wanting to be healthcare facility directors. They grow up playing cowboys and Indians. Nobody knows it exists. And I thought, yeah, you're right. Cops and robbers. They're doing all these other things. So the question to you, do you know what kind of feedback, like the kids, the high school kids going through your programs, and then the young professionals that you guys are hiring who are going through all of these little areas of DPR, finding out what's their not around particular areas, but what's their feedback about healthcare, about their choice? What do they say? What feedback do you get?
Yeah, I love that. I'm super interested in hearing back from you, Pete, on what this person says, and I think some of it is,
yeah, I am too.
is maybe it's not taking jobs away, maybe it's making your job easier, so that you can spend time doing right. So if you think about and I'm going to go off here on a little bit of a tangent, I'll come back, but if you think of a doctor, right, a doctor used to spend. In his hour, used to spend 5 minutes with the patient, right? And then he would go back and he or she would have to type up the notes and do research on what the diagnosis was, and would spend his or her time doing other things than spending time with the patient. And so now you introduce AI, and your notes are done for you, right? You're not taking the notes. You're not going back and transcribing what he or she said with the patient. So that's taking time, making your time, being able to spend more time with the patient. Clinical diagnosis is AI in an instant is looking at what potentially is the issue, and maybe they're narrowing it down, right? They're narrowing it down. So from me, from a physician standpoint, now you have physicians doing what they really need to do, is being in front of the patient, right? So maybe it's AI is helping me do what I love easier and better. From the standpoint, so I'm super excited about that. And
I told him he can't boo.
Right, yeah. It's not the NFL draft. It's not the NFL draft with Goodell. Right, you can't boo the guy, and I think there's just these futurists, right, that I would always love to to here, right? And so I went to this this futurist that was in the translational genomics field, and she said that eventually we're going to engineer disease out, right? We're going to engineer diabetes out. We're going to engineer cancer out. We're going to engineer all diseases out of your system. Anything that you had predisposed, whether it was MS or ALS or whatever disease, we're going to engineer that out, which is I don't think that's in my lifetime or our lifetime, but that's pretty cool.
How long did you say that takes?
Yeah, well, and if you look at the way that technology is doubling, right? If you just human history, how long it took in the Middle Ages for technology to double, and then you get to the 1800s, how long did that take? And then you get to the early 1900s, how long did that take? And now you're where we're at, and technology is doubling a lot quicker than it was. I don't know what that stat is. But so who knows, right? They're investigating the genome and the DNA sequences and all that stuff. That's way smarter than I am in this stuff. But so then how is healthcare changing because of that, right? And so are now they're just meant for accidents, and then who knows? Eventually we get to the Jetsons, and you're in flying cars, and there's never any accidents. So eventually, are you not going to need hospitals? I don't know. Yeah. And then eventually, maybe a hospital is a one-stop shop. You just go to one room that you check in. That's your pre-admissions, everything in the room. You do your pre-op there. You get all that stuff done. The surgery is done right there. Your post-op is done there. Your post-acute care is done, and all that in one room. And you no longer need to go around to different facilities. So it's fascinating just what is out there and what's in people's minds. So, but I love that your son has a little bit of the big brother is watching as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing too, that I think that we just have to be cautious with it, right? Yeah. I'm going to use another movie quote, right? What's Genesis is Skynet, right? So the machines Terminator, the machines take over the world, but I think there's just a huge opportunity, and I believe that the curious folks will help with that. Will really push back and say, is this valuable or not, right? Have we gone too far? Are we losing what it means to be a person, right? I know this is sort of turning into an AI podcast now, but who's writing papers, right? In high school, is AI writing your paper, or are you writing the paper? And have we lost the ability to do some of that? So that gets me back to my high school thing.
I know what you were doing.
If you only had it then, right?
That was your second question, right?
But Pete,
right, exactly. Where are the high school kids?
Pete, I'd be curious. Pete, when you're out there, I'd be curious, right? So, like, obviously, the whole Skynet thing. What happened is people were no longer the common denominator, right? And,
right.
Still on this little narrative mind that the start and the end ends with people to people, right? People create, people have the need, and then at the end, people are the consumers, right? So if one of those changes, we're in trouble. But today, that start and that end are people to people, right? When we're starting a project, the people need to be there to create the need. The people need to be the ones that are there to at least get this engine started for whatever that is, if it's a project. And then there needs to be people at the end, because people are ultimately the consumers. People always use the word project closeout. I used to use it all the time. That's actually the beginning, right? So right. Like my thought is, and I'd be curious if it's the same in, journalism and things like that, right? At the end of the day, there's an interest. People are the creators, right? We're the interest. We're the end point where we're consuming it. What we're creating in between it is an acceleration. So you're creating and consuming, right? So I think that makes me feel a little better. I sleep a little better at night knowing that. I'd be curious if it's that widespread, because I usually only think of it in work, work life and project life. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same thing. I'd be curious to hear what he says.
Patrick, it is so true, right? It is so true. And I think what we need to do culturally is to provide the people with what they need, right? I mentioned
Right.
it's the something or the someplace, right? And so if I go back to construction, and I think Peter was waiting for us to get back to that construction piece.
We came back.
We got here, and so what we're finding is and this is how we draw people to want to come to the job site, and what we to come to any job site, right? Is you're now providing built-in bathrooms, right? No more porta potties. You're now providing air-conditioned lunchrooms, right? No more sitting out in the sweltering heat under a lunch tent. And so you're really giving folks what's necessary for them to do their jobs, again, easier, right? You know, you're a lot of construction projects on hospitals are, you know, expansions or renovations, and parking is 8,000 miles away. And so how do you provide the shuttling? How do you provide the temporary parking closer to the job site? How do you provide them the tools so that they can really spend the time doing what's necessary, and not doing waste? And so a lot of that is what are you providing to the people so that they can do what they love easier? And you know, I wasn't always where I'm at now, right? I spent a lot of times after college on a job site having to use a porta potty. The porta potty wasn't cleaned, and now you go to the job site and there's these massive restroom, hard plumbed facilities, so that it's a nicer environment for the craft employee.
That's a big change.
Yeah, and the same thing too, right? Even in Milwaukee and Chicago and Boston, in the summertime it gets hot, and so you have your lunch outside under a tent, or do you have it in a temporary facility that is conditioned? It gives you a nice respite to take some time off and get refocused on what you're going to do the rest of the second half of the day. So it's that improved culture to give the people what they need to do their job.
Yeah, wow.
They can focus on what they do best, right?
Yeah,
what you're
exactly.
what you're saying, Ham, is it's giving them more room to create or consume, right? You know, we always say it, like, at the end of the day, we got a lot of folks that walk around hospitals and do a lot of like regulatory inspections. You know, you can never find everything. And you want those people to be finding the critical items, the ones that are actually really directly related to patient care and public safety. And that's what makes them feel good. So if you can remove the administrative work that nobody really loves to enjoy, at least nobody that I've met in our company, you're really actually improving their quality of life. And you're also getting to what's most important for the success of your client. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of what you said, Ham. I think it's important that we continue to create more of an environment so people can create, right? That's what that's all about.
And part of that environment, and where I was going to go, I don't know, 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago on the high school, the getting back to the high school response was training.
We'll get you back to Bennett eventually, Ham.
Yeah. Well, the training, you have to train the future generation, right? And so apprenticeship, mentorship is hugely important. And I think you have that craftsman or that mason that was able to put up what they did, and we're losing some of that. And so you have to train, you have to give the tools that's needed. And part of that, we're now in our third year of what we call our healthcare fellowship program. And so what we're doing is finding younger people that have a passion for healthcare construction and that are the future leaders of our healthcare industry. And so now we've got this fellowship program. It usually starts in February, ends in October. We have a final capstone project that we assign to them. But during that time, during that 6, 7, 8 months, we've got programs where they're hearing from not only us, from a standpoint of how we're building construction projects, right? They're hearing from outside experts, right? So they're hearing from ICRA specialists, they're hearing from clinicians, they're hearing from designers. And so, you get into a renovation project, and you have to understand what's important to the clinicians, right? And so if you're on a bed floor, noise is a problem. Vibration is a problem, especially if you're dealing with NICU babies, right? So we're hearing from those clinicians and what's important for them to understand. We're hearing from the design professionals, constructability and what we build and what's important to them, distinguishing features of work. And so we're providing these future leaders within our company some additional healthcare training to help them in their career. And then because we want sort of some skin of the game, we have a capstone project where we organize these folks into groups, and they've got a little project that they work on, and then there's a presentation at the end of the year, and they're presenting to not only DPR folks, but we've got an architect, we've got an industrialist, we've got an owner panel that these guys are presenting to, and there's an award for having the best capstone project. So it's a pretty cool program. We're in our third year. After the first year we did it, we're sort of, is this going to be successful or not? But it's been very well received. So I don't see us stopping this anytime soon. And just the thing that sort of warms my heart is that the future is in good hands. These folks, and Pete, I'm sure your son is like this. They're good people. They want to see the world become a better place. So that really warms the heart to where the industry is going.
So you guys have programs that target the high school level.
Yes.
That target your younger professionals who are just entering the field, and then that target the fellowship. Is that your existing employees who have already worked? What's the audience for the fellowship? How many years?
So we want, and we're looking at 4 to 6 years, right?
Okay.
Of experience, and we don't care if you're a superintendent or a pre-construction or a project manager, whatever. It's just you have that passion for healthcare construction, right? So there's a 4 to 6 years requirement, a passion towards healthcare construction, and wanting to stay in healthcare and build that next generation of healthcare leader.
Awesome. So we're coming up to the close of our hour, and I knew it would kind of go by very fast. My guest, Hamilton Espinosa from DPR Construction, Patrick Murphy from CREF. I think the biggest upset, in addition to Larry Bird only winning 3 NBA titles, the biggest upset from this podcast is that Ham, you and Patrick did not start talking about your background there. We could do a podcast on golf, but we can't go that way yet because we don't have a lot of time left. Patrick, I know you're going to say something.
No, I'm good. I feel good. I feel like I you know me, but I'm good.
Yeah.
But I guess,
yeah. No, I just love the free flowingness of this podcast, right? We hit a bunch of topics, and this is Monolani on the Big Island. I'm not there right now. It's a wonderful golf course. If you get a chance, go play it.
Well, I was going to say, did you hit it beyond the green, or are you teeing off there? I'm just trying to figure out where you are on the hole.
I took this picture, and if you zoom in, my ball is like 10 feet from the pin, and I made the birdie putt. It's a par 3. So that's lucky. A claim to fame.
I like that.
Very nice, man. Very nice. So last question, we try to be solutions oriented if we can. If you guys had to offer an opinion as to how to help close this employee shortage, to bring more people in, and you've touched on a lot of them, but what piece of advice would you give? Just wide open. What would your solution be? What advice would you provide?
To
help close that gap, to attract more people into this field, so that because I worry, this, Patrick, we talk about this a lot. You look 5 to 10 years, the people leading the hospitals, if we don't do something, we could be in trouble, more trouble than I think people sometimes assume.
I think it's really about culturally giving the person what they want and not being judgmental about what they want, right? And so having that open flexibility and we've all heard it, you can be anything you want to be, as long and giving that person the right tools, the right environment, the right training, the right mentorship, the right apprenticeship to be able to do that, right? And I do see us being better at that, and us continuing to get better at that.
Yeah, you just hit it, Ham. I mean, even though we kind of went without an agenda today, we did kind of lay out the way I would answer that, right? It's remembering that there's people out there and take away the filter. There are people out there that like to work with their hands. They like to be out in the field, right? Whatever that field might be. Draw them in, give them an opportunity to succeed, make their condition one that they can create. And then this is the piece I was going to end on, but you already hit it all in one fatal swoop, Ham, but find a mentor, right?
Yeah.
And that mentor may not be in that existing hospital all the time. I mean, we have a program that we can bring in folks that were in hospitals for 40 years and they're on a lot of folks are retiring now, whether they want to retire or not. Some of them, because of the pressures of the economy, are getting forced into earlier retirement. They go home. They realize that 5 days a week at home may not be actually what their wife wanted them to be, and they've still got a lot left to give. There's a lot of folks, like, let's not let these boomers off the hook. I don't mean to be generationalist here, but they're there, and they're that mentor piece that I think really will lock these folks in, and that visceral emotion of helping people get healthier will stick. Because I was typecast into it like you were, Ham. I mean, first job I ever had in construction was a hospital, and I haven't left since. I'm like Costanza, but that's why, right?
Yeah, that intellectual property that exists in that more experienced person. I'm not going to say older, but that more experienced person that exists here is huge. And how do you get that to just additional training for the younger generations?
Yeah, and that's, you guys are doing it. That's one of the things that we're working on as well.
Pete, you know what that does though, Pete, too? If you have that built in, that allows one of the questions we had that we didn't answer, like, how do these organizations find people? Well, cast a wider net with more lures. Yeah. If you have that person to help guide and put rails on it, now it's just, all right, I want to work with my hands. I want to be in the field, and they don't necessarily need to have their CHFM, or they don't need to understand 100% how to do an ILSM or an ICRA or a PICRA permit. They're going to be given an opportunity to learn it in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for too long, and we've talked about this, healthcare organizations, they're too black and white with what they're looking for, and it doesn't match the reality. They need to expand beyond and see what the possibilities are. I didn't want to ask that last question because you guys did. You talked about so much, but I want you to pick one thing, and you did. So Hamilton Espinosa, National Healthcare Market Leader, DPR Construction, Patrick Murphy, President for CREF. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Hamilton, and thank you, Peter.
Thank you, gentlemen. And as always, thank you for watching the Healthcare Facilities Network. We will be back with a future episode. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
If you want to be a guest on a future episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network, go to healthcarefacilitiesnetwork.com and let us know who you are and what you want to talk about, because together we can solve this critical aging issue.